So you're thinking about moving to Sacramento, California. Today I'm going to share some of the crucial insights you need to know if you're thinking about relocating to Sacramento. In this video, we're going to cover schools, weather, job opportunities, areas, price points, community, culture, and affordability. Also stay till the very end and I'm going to show you my top spots to move into based on price and affordability.
You know, a lot of people that you and I talk to, Mark, that are relocating to Sacramento, they're leaving the Bay Area or LA or other markets where they're sick of the traffic. And that's, you know, one of the many reasons why they're moving. So I don't think people really come here for the traffic. They're coming here for, you know, improvement in life. So I suggest, you know, figuring out essentially like where on the map do you want to be and then kind of working backwards from there.
Okay. For me, normally the pain points I got usually is location, right? Sacramento is vast. It's spread out. So if you guys don't know Sacramento, just understand that it can be a little bit like of a bear to grasp. Like on the 50, on the 80, commuting, traversing between the two. Then you got Elk Grove. Then you got West Sacramento. So it's very, very spread out. And if you're not very careful about where you move, you could end up having a lot of traffic that you might not have anticipated because you're coming out to look at homes on Sunday. As far as areas go too, there's various areas, various price points. I mean, the price points kind of completely vary in the various like locations and whatnot. Some areas are up and coming. Some areas are at the very top of like right now the pricing. Not saying they won't go up, but you're paying a little bit more of a premium for that because they're more like in demand kind of areas because they're more known. Sure. Then you're talking about there's various areas like time to move. Like when is a good time to move? During the holiday season when less people are shopping, during the summer season when kids are out of school. That's one of the things you need to factor in. Then there's weather, like California weather. We always talk about how hot it is during the summertime, but like as far as like the weather goes, that plays into a lot of it because, you know, a lot of people from the Bay Area aren't used to the hotter weather. And so during summertime, it can be a little bit overwhelming. Then lifestyles also, if you're a golfer and you want a golf course community, we got you. If you're a mountain biker, we got some great trails and all that stuff. And then we segue into stuff like job diversity. I mean, as far as people know, the Bay Area is really heavy with tech, but in Sacramento, we got a lot of state jobs. I mean, a lot of people are employed state jobs. We got medical, we got tech as well. We got school jobs and everything too. And then things to do. We got like a very nice kind of like community vibe in a lot of these spots that we're going to go over today. And the culture, affordability, all that fun stuff, and new homes. So there's a lot to unpack as far as moving into Sacramento. But like Aaron, like you mentioned, like what are some of your, like as far as the more kind of like in-demand spots that a lot of people call you about, like as far as getting loans, because Aaron is one of the top mortgage brokers in the area. What are some areas that people are like, oh, I like this area, and let's just dive into them a little bit.
It's really easy, man. It's like the top three. It's Roseville, Folsom, or Elk Grove. I mean, those are some of the most, you know, popular and in-demand markets. And they also have, you know, a little bit to offer, you know, everybody, if you will. There's higher end, higher price point areas. You know, there's kind of entry level areas as well. But I'd say at least like 75% of the people that we talk to that are moving to Sacramento, they're focused in on one of those three communities.
So you said Folsom, Elk Grove, and Roseville? Are those the three?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I would say that, oh yeah, like I said, okay. So like, let's break it down a little bit. One of it is like Elk Grove, right? People love Elk Grove. Why? Because some people still have to do that once a week commute to the Bay Area. And Elk Grove, if you see on the map right here, it's the southernmost part of kind of the Sacramento area. So a lot of people like the idea that they can get to the Bay Area in about an hour and 20 minutes. Not short, but shorter, right? Where if you have like a Roseville or a Folsom, you got to tack on maybe another 20 to 30 minutes depending on traffic. So people definitely like that. Elk Grove is very generational. People love Elk Grove. They want to stay in Elk Grove. The three main zip codes in Elk Grove are the 757, 758, and the 624 that people love. Each one is very different as well too. 624 is a little bit more rural. 757 is where 90% of the new home building is happening. And then you have the 758 that has the man-made lakes and Laguna, which is very nice. I love that area. Price point, what are you thinking, Aaron?
You know, you're going to be probably like entry level in the, you know, high fives, low sixes, you know, somewhere in that range. I mean, unless you're, you know, kind of picking up a fixer upper, you know, more of a really small home. But if you're looking for like what most people that we're talking to, I feel like they're looking for like a family house. Like they want 3 to 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 2 to 2,500 square feet or more. You know, so in that range, I feel like 600 is going to be your entry point. and it also depends on you know, which one of those zip codes you're looking at. You know, my hometown, I grew up in 95624, the original Elk Grove. And you know, the houses out there, they're going to be older, on bigger lots, more trees, you know, all that kind of stuff. Where if you go into the 758, which that was built out like in the 90s and 2000s, you got a lot more shopping resources. The houses are newer, you know, all that stuff. And then, you know, like Mark just said, like the vast majority of all the new home construction is in that 757. So kind of depending on, you know, do you want a yard or do you want a brand new house? Or, you know, like what, you know, those are kind of the questions that you have to answer. And depending on what the answer is, that'll really kind of dictate what part of Elk Grove makes the most sense for you. Along with what we said in the beginning is where do you have to go to, commute to, you know, spend your time at?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people like the Elk Grove area because it is close to downtown. Some people like, you know, maybe work at UC Davis Medical Center and they want a little separation. So Elk Grove tends to be one of those spots that they're looking at, especially like Aaron mentioned, that there are so many new home builders because Elk Grove does have land. And so you're seeing a lot of builders like Taylor Morrison, Woodside, like Tim Lewis, you got New Home Company. Everyone underneath the sun is building in Elk Grove. You have some stuff happening in Elk Grove, like the Sacramento Zoo's moving to Elk Grove. Then you have like, there's going to be a train station that's going to connect Elk Grove with the Bay Area. You have the new Sky Casino. So a lot of people like Elk Grove. And what I've noticed specifically about Elk Grove is that someone will move in and then mom will come in right after. Or their friend will come in right after, and they like to stick into Elk Grove. I'd say also for the schools, you know, go to greatschools.org, but schools are something that are very appealing for people who are moving into Elk Grove as well, too. So Elk Grove, definitely, I'd say you're not going to be spending as much as maybe like Folsom, probably about the same as Roseville. But the thing with Elk Grove is it does have a lot of land to build on. And, you know, you're seeing like the 757 kind of just like transform into this mega spot. And for me, I like Elk Grove as far as like, you know, as far as a spot that if you're going to see growth, it's going to blow up for sure. The only thing that I would say with Elk Grove is, especially in like the 757, where everyone seems to love, is the fact that it's pretty flat. Unlike areas like in Roseville and like Folsom, Roseville has its flat spots, but Elk Grove is pretty flat. A majority of 757, you're going to see tract homes. You know what I mean? A lot of people that we move in there are like, yeah, it's a little tight in there as well too. But I'd say the food is fantastic over there, close to downtown. Like I said, its price point's going to be probably a little bit easier than like your Folsoms. Melrose, probably one of the highest, I'd say, in the area if you're looking for new homes. But Elk Grove is definitely like one of those spots I'd say that like people should definitely check out. And people are loving Elk Grove. So let's head into your next time, Folsom. Let's move it over and we'll show you guys on the map where we're going. What do you like about Folsom?
Oh man, it's kind of like what is there not to like about Folsom except just kind of the price point, really. I mean, there's just I love the Palladio, you know, which is a really like nice outdoor kind of airy shopping / restaurant area. There's tons and tons of really great restaurants all throughout there. There's all your big box shopping, Costco, you know, all that stuff. The schools are top notch. And you're really close to a lot of outdoor things like Nimbus Lake, Folsom Lake, the river, bike trails, hiking, all sorts of stuff. And then, of course, you're also right off of Highway 50. So if you work in downtown Sacramento or, you know, something like that where you need to make a commute, it's super convenient. Which is why, I mean, you know, that's one of the big reasons why Folsom is just blowing up like it is, and is so popular. It's got a whole lot to offer, and a lot like Elk Grove, there's a whole lot of room to grow to the south of the Highway 50, which is where all the new home building is taking place. So you've got a lot of growth opportunity out there. You know, it's, I really like, you know, every time we talk to clients about it, it's you know, the only thing anybody could really complain about, it seems like, is just kind of the price. It's, you know, you're kind of paying what you know, get what you pay for, right? But it's, you get a lot out there, but you're going to pay a lot.
Oh yeah, I'd say. I mean, the funny thing about Folsom in general is if you look at it right now, and you're looking at it on Google World right here, is the fact that it's like one side of the 50 was basically built out. That was Folsom. That was it. And it's so funny that they didn't really do any building kind of on the other side of Folsom or on the other side of the 50. So that whole area, as you see right here, all that land right there is being built out into communities. You got builders like Toll Brothers, Taylor, Tri Point, Woodside, Lennar. Every big builder. I mean, by the time they're done, we're probably going to see like 30,000 new homes out there as well too. There's also a brand new elementary right in Folsom Ranch that everybody absolutely loves. Went to a soccer game with my daughter, and it was insane how big it was. And they're going to be putting in another what's called elementary school, another high school by the time we hit 2030, and then another high school. I think I might have said that. Elementary, middle, or elementary, high school coming in before 2030. And then I think the middle school is going to come right after 2030.
Nice.
There's also going to be a huge sports complex out there. I think it's going to be the biggest one in all of Sacramento. 3 indoor hockey rinks and everything too. So people like love the Folsom area. I would say though, one of the things that people are also falling in love with new homes specifically are the great floor plan, the great room concepts, right? Older Folsom, you're going to see more of the 3-level type of houses, like the, entry, kitchen, bedrooms. And so I think a lot of people are kind of done with that floor plan. So a lot of people who like Folsom are definitely moving into the new home spot. And the new home company, the new home building is very, like, the price point is pretty much right there with Folsom. And since inventory is low in Folsom, people are rushing to the new home area. What else do you think? What else do you like about what don't you like about Folsom? How's that?
I mean, besides it being, more expensive than some of the areas, it depending on where you're at in Folsom, it can be a little bit inconvenient. Like if you're all the way back towards the lake and the prison, basically like up Green Valley Road, up Blue Ravine, and if you needed to get to Highway 50 or something like that, that could take you a good 20, 25 minutes if there's traffic and all that stuff, because you're basically taking all the back roads and whatnot. But I mean, there's, like I started off with it, there's really like, you got to be very picky to find things not to like about Folsom, in my opinion.
Well, I think Folsom is when all of a sudden we start getting in, especially on the 50, you start getting into like the mountainish kind of areas, right?
Yeah.
Like I think like other than like if you're going like down the 50 and 50 is where you go, you're going to see areas like where I live, Gold River. You're going to see areas like where Aaron lives as well too. They're kind of flat by the river, you got all that stuff, which is nice. But then as we hit Folsom, that's when we start to kind of go our incline, right? Yep. Folsom, El Dorado Hills, and then you're gone. And so Folsom really does have that balance between like a nice little flat spot, like, and then he has those hills like on Serpa and everything too that are just gone. And then on the other side of the freeway, you got all the new home building that was building like the Lennar communities over there, the new home companies too. And so it's really, if you're someone who likes views, someone likes that resort style vibe, Folsom's also really super close to Folsom Lake. The old town Folsom has that kind of like cute little charm, but it also has like wine tasting rooms. You do a lot of holiday festivals as well too. I would say the biggest thing though about Folsom for me, the biggest negative I would say about Folsom just straight up is the fact that because there's so much new home building happening in Folsom, we're losing a little bit of what I think originally people went to Folsom for, right? We're kind of like, we're building a lot of homes and we're building a lot of stuff out there. Now I'm not saying there's not a lot of amazing stuff out there in Folsom, a lot of scenery, but I will say though, the imprint that you're going to have when you build like, 30,000 new homes, all these schools, all these sports complexes, all these commercial developments, you are going to be losing a little bit of like that Folsom kind of, I work downtown, I live in Folsom, I'm driving into Folsom, there's the lake and all that stuff too, and I'm coming into my house. And that'd probably be my only detractor on Folsom. I mean, you're on SMUD, and there's a big difference in Sacramento too, as far as energy goes. Like SMUD is half the price for electricity than PG&E. None of the brownouts. I have SMUD. I absolutely love it. And Folsom is that furthest spot on the 50 that you're still into SMUD territory. After that, in El Dorado Hills and Cameron Park and everything too, you're in PG&E. What do you think about that, Aaron?
Oh yeah, especially you get into the summers where. They're telling us that we have to go full electric cars by the end of the decade, but then they tell everybody not to charge their electric cars. So, I mean, if you're somebody in PG&E country, you got to deal with the brownouts where they're shutting off the power to save the grid in other areas. And it's expensive. That's why a lot of people, like if you're in PG&E country, a lot of people, you know, go through the trouble and expense of getting solar. Whereas like if you're in SMUD country, like you and I, Mark, like I've looked at solar multiple times and it's like, man, I'm gonna have to be in this thing for a really long time for it to pencil. Whereas you know, you can easily have $1,000 a month electric bill up in PG&E country, depending on the size of your house. So that can play a big role. That's one of the bennies of Roseville. You got Roseville Electric. You know, they got their own situation out there too.
But Roseville Electric is getting more expensive, and that's kind of interesting as well too. But yeah, I mean, for SMUD, it's great, guys. Honestly, it's really nice, especially for people coming in from the Bay Area, or if you're coming in from a smaller home. Let's say you have something 1,500 square feet, and you're coming into a 3,000 square foot house. The electric bill is going to be something that a lot of people don't factor in. Everyone's, oh my God, I love a bigger house. But at the same time, coming into it and getting on SMUD will basically, you'll be like, wow, we were paying that for our 1,500 square foot house. For electricity bill, now we got a 3,000 square foot house, and it's actually cheaper. So it is very, very kind of interesting. All these little added things, right?
Yep.
Now, a lot of people also will probably be curious about fire insurance, which is a big thing happening here in the Sacramento area. Now, for fire insurance, if you're looking for new homes, tends not to be a big thing. Home insurance that's where you're going to get into trouble a little bit more is the closer you get to the lake or kind of like the dry grass. So just make sure that before you decide to find that amazing house in Folsom, especially like in El Dorado Hills, Cameron Park, you're just making sure that the home insurance is okay, because we have had a lot of clients who fall in love with houses, and then they ask us for our like home insurance guy, Javier Ortiz, and then he basically says, man, you're paying like $15,000 a year for homeowners insurance. So just understand that that is something that is definitely coming into our market, and just to be aware of it. What do you think, Aaron?
Oh yeah, fire insurance is a huge thing out here. You know, just like the flood insurance in Florida, how it just keeps getting more expensive after every year of hurricanes and hurricanes. You know, the same thing with fires. And you know, we just went through fire season, and although we didn't, you know, have you know, a record fire year, you know, the fires that took place up north. They definitely did a lot of damage, and that's going to cost insurance companies a whole lot of money, and they have to spread that risk. And so I've noticed fire insurance premiums, you know, double, triple, etc. over the last several years. And so that's something you got to factor in your decision-making process when you're buying in the fire country, is basically not only how much is the fire insurance today, but what if it's more expensive next year? Can you still afford it? And, you know, factoring that into your decisions. But I kind of view it as like, you know, hey man, it's kind of the cost of doing business. If you want to live out in the woods or in the foothills and get away from all the people and whatnot, you're also getting away from resources. And, you know, somebody's got to pay for it. And it's not going to be me living next to the college in Sacramento with no fire risk, you know, so it's, you just got to expect to pay more.
No, 100%. I mean, it just is what it is. And it's the only part that kind of, I think, worrisome to people is maybe not right now the home insurance you have, but in the future years, what is going to happen? Are you going to get bumped in the California Fair Plan? Yeah,
that's the total. Like this last year, for instance, you know, like in California, there's something called the Fair Plan that you just mentioned, and it's essentially like supposed to be insurance of last resort. If nobody will insure a property, you got the Fair Plan. Well, now the Fair Plan's like the means of first option, because no insurers want to do the fire country stuff. But what we've seen is like just this last year, the Fair Plan almost doubled their rates in a lot of areas. So if you were paying $4,000 a year, you're paying maybe $8,000 a year or whatever. And unless you're somebody that believes that we're not going to have any more fires, and you know that the situation with that's going to get better, you know, logically you'd think you're going to actually pay more in the future for your fire insurance. Yeah, where you're looking at right there, like where it says Clarksville on that map, if you were to just draw like a line straight across there, anything above that, you're going to pay more for fire insurance for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And all the stuff
also
through like
by
El Dorado
the water.
Hills and Summit Village and those areas, depending on if you're on a canyon or near like a grassy area, you're going to have increased coverage too.
The funniest thing is, it's like the wind also and all that stuff too. Like talking to some people who know real good home insurance, are like, the closer you are to the lake, fire insurance becomes even more, home insurance is just going to get a little bit more pricey. So all these things you guys need to factor in. I think a lot of the videos I see regarding the Sacramento area, people kind of breeze over the home insurance. But the idea for you guys is to understand this, like that it can get a little pricey. And before you drive all the way up from the Bay Area or fly in from LA, just factor in the home insurance as well too, because it is definitely getting to be one of those things. Like I said, we got El Dorado Hills out here, which is and all of a sudden after Folsom, you're kind of going up Folsom and then up the freeway on 50, you go higher up and there's like El Dorado Hills. And El Dorado Hills has got to have and we'll hit El Dorado just for a second. Beautiful community, golf course community, probably my favorite. Serrano up there, absolutely gorgeous, nice houses, master plan community, little villages, and on the very top you got Serrano North, which is beautiful. Can't get in there for at least under maybe like 1.5 nowadays, so it's a hard spot to get into. El Dorado Hills, though, too, they've got communities like what's called Ridgeview. They've got communities like Promontory. They've got really nice communities up there as well, too. El Dorado Hills is one of those spots a lot of people like to move into. Although right now, currently, we're seeing a little bit of a stall on El Dorado, and it's mainly because a lot of people are a little bit worried about the homeowner's insurance. But it's absolutely beautiful, and I think it's one of those areas that probably has some of the best views in all the Sacramento area because you are on that 50 going up that incline. You do have a lot of houses that are kind of set back with nice views, infinity edge pools. If you guys are looking for something that's like $1 million, you want everything bells and whistles, El Dorado Hills definitely is another spot you should be looking at, don't you think?
Oh yeah, El Dorado Hills, one of my top. I personally my favorite place in the region. I prefer that anywhere else, and a lot of it's like what you were talking about. It's you're literally up on the hill, and depending on where your house is or what store you're at or whatever, it's pretty cool. You're looking down over the valley. The views are great. The sunsets are great. And it's just a really nice, higher end part of the region with, some nice shopping. And you're literally right on the edge of the foothills, if you will. So you're really close to getting out into the outdoors and doing stuff. I'm out there almost every single day. That's a good area to be in.
Well, El Dorado Hills, also the price point, I'd say probably is like $100,000 more than Folsom. And mainly it's because Folsom and El Dorado were neck and neck, but then Folsom started building some homes in the new home area that I think brought the median home price a little bit lower. And so El Dorado Hills has become the area where you do have building there, but it's like a Toll Brothers building. It's like $1 million building. I would say maybe at the low point of building, you're looking at maybe 800, whereas in Folsom, you can probably get something for around 650. So the price point in El Dorado Hills definitely tends to be more expensive up there, and the price per square foot is up in Serrano North. Like I said, you can't get in there for under 1.5. So that area is kind of blown up. Now let's take a look. And like I said, also schools wise, you'd love it. Lifestyle wise, get a boat, move to Folsom, move to El Dorado Hills. It's just a really, really fun vibe. So if you're someone maybe coming from the Bay Area and you're saying we want to get something, because a lot of people do come from other areas and they're like, if I'm moving to Sacramento, I want that luxury home that I saw in Cribs back in the day. El Dorado Hills is definitely that spot where you can get that. Golf course community. I know that they also bring food from the restaurant in Serrano North, so it's kind of a fun thing. Now, we're gonna cross court and go over to the 80. Now, one of the things though to note about Sacramento is if you're seeing here on the map, the 50s over here and the 80s over here. Now, a lot of people make that big mistake when working with the wrong realtor and lender. To say, hey, I'm going to be working in Folsom, but I want to live in Rocklin. The thing about Sacramento, if you see it right here, is there's no real good access to get between the 50 and the 80. It doesn't work that way. So you got a lot of streets like Sierra College. You got a lot of streets kind of trying to traverse like Sunrise and everything too. So that's one of the biggest traffic jams in the Sacramento area, where I always tell people there's 50 people, there's 80 people. If you try to do the living one place, working the other place, it's going to be a bear, because 8 o'clock in the morning, it's going to be packed. 5 o'clock in the morning, it's going to be packed. And during the weekends, because Roseville tends to be a nice big shopping hunt for people, a lot of people and a lot of good dining, people love to jam up the Hazel, Sunrise, and everything too. So I'd say for you guys, just a word of the wise, there are some amazing areas on the 50, amazing areas on the 80, but as Aaron said earlier on the video, figure out what you would need to be close to. If you got to work, like, let's say on the 50 somewhere, like, I would say stay on the 50 as best you can. 80, the same thing. Because like I said, if you see on this map, there's just not really any good ways to go between these freeways. And it's just something to kind of keep in mind. So let's go into Roseville. And we won't talk about West Roseville, because over here, West Roseville is where they're doing a lot of the new home building. But Roseville, what do you like about it, Aaron?
Well, you know, it's a really nice, like, clean, you know, community. You know, it's some areas it's an older community. It's not like all brand new, but there's been a lot of newer development all through, you know, especially in the 90s and the 2000s. And so got a lot of really good shopping, a lot of restaurants. There's also a really successful financial district, all up and down basically Douglas Boulevard off of Eureka and a couple other roads. There's, you know, a lot of, you know, financial advisory, insurance, mortgage, real estate. You know, there's a lot of business out there. So you got a lot of professionals that live and work out in that community, but the schools are great. And, you know, if you're somebody that, you know, likes to spend a lot of their time off of the 80 versus off of the 50, because it's not like, you know, you got to drive to Texas to go to the 50, but it's just not super convenient. So if you're somebody that's going to spend a lot of time off the 80, Roseville is a great community to be in, especially if you got a family and you like doing, you know, sports and outdoor activities and things like that. And not to mention, you got the Roseville Galleria, which I'm not sure like the exact statistic on it, but it's got to be one of the largest malls like on the West Coast. So it's you just got this massive like shopping conglomerate right in the middle of it too. So Roseville's got a lot to offer.
Yeah. Also, the other thing too to mention is that like Roseville, there's West Roseville and there's Roseville. I'd say Roseville is like, if you could see kind of where this is, there's going to be some communities where you're going to see like new homes, right? And I'm not saying it's like a bad thing. I'm saying eventually that area is going to be booming. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on there, but there is a difference. Like Roseville here, there's not a whole lot of land, so you're not going to see a lot of building Roseville, where the fountains are, the Galleria, West Elm, Restoration Hardware, the Apple Store are over here. But you're going to find that building more over here. So you're going to see like more of the Fitty-Mints, the Solaire, kind of near the Antelope border. And that's kind of where you're seeing a lot of the new home building. And so a lot of people were getting a little confused because they're like, oh, hey, Mark's been talking about all this great shopping in Roseville, and they go over to West Roseville and they're like, I'm not really seeing it. West Roseville is being built up to be this great, amazing community. It will take a little longer than Folsom because it's a little further away from shopping and everything too, but it's an area where they're putting in a whole lot of houses. And so that area, it can get a little confusing. Roseville here is kind of like what you're looking at, like, you know, kind of like where the shopping is, like Aaron said, like the fountains, the Galleria. You got big box stores. You have the Yard House. You have Pushkin's Bakery. They developed it out really, really nicely. For me, I like the area, right? The biggest drawback for me in Roseville is the fact that, like, it just can be a little bit like this. The traffic, as far as getting in and out of these stores, can be a little bit of a pain. The traffic between like the 80 and the 65, and the 65 is a freeway that you'll take if you want to go over to Lincoln and some parts of Rockland as well too. And so it can be a little bit like this, and that's one of the things for me. I think they should have spread out the shopping a little bit better, because you have like Nordstrom's, and then you have also Nordstrom Rack. You got Best Buy, you got the West Elm over here, and so it can be a little bit dense when it comes to shopping. Like for me, I'm not a big fan of it. I'd rather go Amazon, because it's just the parking spots are a little bit tighter, and it just seems to be a cluster a lot of times in the Roseville shopping area. Now, like I said, what they're building out here though is, you know, the Roseville, you know, the new kind of Roseville, I guess the West Roseville area, where you got West Park, who's got a brand new high school, which is gorgeous. And they're going to be building in new shopping centers, all that stuff out there. It's just going to take a little bit of time, but that's where all the new home building is going to be. What do you think about the West Roseville area, Aaron?
It's, you know, it's out there. I mean, if I were going to pick anything negative about it, it's just, you know, it's kind of out there, but everything's new out there, and it's definitely up and coming. And if, you know, if you're somebody that maybe you work for the airport, you work for Amazon has like a 5 billion square foot facility out near the airport. If you're somebody that works in downtown Sacramento, even, you know, West Roseville can be pretty convenient actually, because you can basically hop down Highway 99. You're just cutting through all the country. It's all rice fields out there basically to the west. And so the roads are, you know, it's like a grid. not many stop signs or lights, and so you can make your commute to those areas fairly easy. If you're living in West Roseville and you're working in the main part of Sacramento or something like the Rancho Cordova or something like that, that's going to not be fun. Doing your commute and all of that stuff. But there's definitely a lot of, growth potential out there. But I think, like you said, it's just going to take, it's going to be a longer, trajectory based off of just how far out it is. But there's a lot of builders committed out there, and they continue to, grow and develop it. It's just a matter of time and resources, where you got enough people out there to warrant, all the bigger things that you find like in Roseville, or they're building out in Folsom or Elk Grove.
And Roseville, the thing about Roseville too, especially if you're buying in West Roseville, just understand that the school districts, you just need to make sure each builder, there's some builders building in one school district, some builders building in the other school district, and people are very futzy when it comes to schools, which I get, kids and everything too. But I would say also go to greatschools.org and just verify that whatever home you're buying is in the school district that you prefer. Realtors will tell you, the schools are this and everything too. But I always say schools are very subjective. So going to a site like greatschools.org is going to give you that idea of okay, this is what the schools are. Boom, we're good. Or we're not. So it's just one of those things. Now, I will tell you one thing though. As far as for me, I think we get a lot of clients looking for new homes, right? And they're looking for the 550s. We want to keep it around 550. I'd say West Roseville is definitely one of those spots.
Sure.
I think Meritage is building out there. DR Horton's building out there, and you can get definitely, or you flip over to Antelope and you can get something in the 5s or even in the high 4s by KB. The other area I would say, if you're looking in the 5s, is Vineyard, kind of right next to Elk Grove, right between Sacramento and Elk Grove as well too. Up and coming area, but you can definitely get something at Taylor Morrison in the high 4s or low 5s, which is really, really nice as well too. Or another spot, if you're looking for new homes and want to keep it low, is the Rancho area, which we haven't even hit into just yet, but the Rancho area as well. If you want something where they're offering crazy incentives and you want to keep it around 500 or low 5s, Rancho is another good spot. So are there all these little spots? And I'd say for a lot of people, price tends to be one of those things that is kind of very much on the minds of everybody at this point with an election and everything too. I would say though, if you're looking for 550, you'd probably be looking for something like in West Roseville, even under maybe 7-ish, for 3 and 2, you'd be looking at West Roseville as opposed to Roseville. Roseville, like I said, doesn't have a lot of land, and they aren't really a lot of new home communities being built there. The area that you're going to be looking at is the West Park, Fittyment, Solaire, the Sierra, all that stuff out there too. So, but you can definitely do it, which is nice. And like I said, a lot of people who buy new and buy in the 500s are buying in the upcoming areas. And those areas, I'd say for me, I like that idea of buying in an upcoming area as opposed to buying maybe at the top at a Folsom, buying right next to it, like Rancho, the Anatolia area, or buying in West Roseville where they just put in a brand new high school. They put in a smart store, or buying Vineyard right next to Elk Grove, the 757 in downtown Sacramento, that if they make a connector between Elk Grove and Folsom El Dorado Hills, you will be smiling ear to ear. So I do like that. What do you think about Rockland? Rockland's another heavy hitter. It's not as popular, I'd say, as Roseville, but Rockland is still one of those spots that's kind of blown up. You know what I mean? What do you like about Rockland?
Rockland's got, some really nice little neighborhoods. Rockland was kind of like it's like the suburbs on the outside of Roseville with a lot of little master plan communities. Rockland also has a really great high school, Whitney. Rockland, they've got their own local resources, grocery stores, stuff like that. But you're right down the road from the Roseville Galleria and everything. So one of the things I guess I would also throw in as a plus with Rockland is it's not as busy, it's not as congested. It's a little more higher end, I would say. There's definitely some higher end in Roseville, especially where it borders Granite Bay. But Rockland definitely has a lot to offer, and it's just, it's a little bit further up the road. Plus, for all you outdoorsmen out there, they have a Bass Pro Shop, so that's a definite plus as well.
Yeah, well, also the high schools there, man. You got Whitney High School and you got Rockland High School. And if you go to greatschools.org, you're going to smile ear to ear. You also have, like, what is it? The Whitney Ranch community as well, too. You got Whitney Oaks. These are master plan communities, and they're just absolutely beautiful. Whitney Ranch is one of my favorite. Low HOAs, and you get a pool, cabana. It looks like Cabo up there for $84. New home building, builders like what created that community, builders like JMC, New Home Company, Richmond American. And now there's like, I think, yeah, Tim Lewis is up there as well too. And now I think what's called JMC is still building, and Anthem United created a new company community as well too. So there's a lot of new home stuff. A lot of people pick up their kids in golf carts. But I do love the idea in Whitney Ranch, and like I said, I'll speak a little on Whitney Ranch, is the fact that like you have other communities that like you're going to pay like $200 a month for an HOA and they don't do anything, right? I love the idea in Whitney Ranch that you're paying $84 a month, and you also get the clubhouse, the pool, all that kind of stuff. And we're not talking just dinky. This is a huge, like there's like 3 pools, barbecue pits, cabanas and everything too. So I do like that. You also have an elementary on the plateau where Whitney Ranch is located. And if you go down the hill, you've got, I think that's Whitney High School right there as well too.
Yep.
And they're also building Whitney Retail Center there. So you're going to have your shopping right down the hill. So for me, I love it. I love Rockland. I love the area. I love Whitney Oaks as well, golf course community, if you want to see some amazing $1 million homes. But Rockland, you know, for me back in the day, that was where the Niners trained. And now it's blown up to be kind of a heavy hitter in our area. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's definitely a nice area, a little like family town area, if you will. And, you know, depending on where you're at in Rockland, you got some great views, too. We were talking about views in El Dorado Hills. They can kind of be up on the hill a little bit, too.
Oh, yeah. The views definitely are fantastic over there, too. And I think as far as the only negative I would say about Rockland, well, there were 2, and especially in the Whitney Ranch areas, is the shopping. You'd have to go to Roseville. Because Aaron mentioned, yeah, you just got to go down the hill. But it all depends on what time you go down the hill. It can be just like, it's not just like, oh, go down the hill and you just pick something up and you're good. There's still a lot of traffic, a lot of congestion in that Roseville kind of like Galleria, big box store area. So it's not that easy. So it's kind of nice to know they're getting their shopping. For me, the biggest detractor on Rockland is that that's when on the 80 you're moving up to PG&E country. And PG&E is one of those things, at least for me, that a lot of people right now are really screaming left and right about PG&E, and they're not happy about it. So as you can see right here on the map, on Roseville, you're in Roseville Electric. And then all of a sudden, when you go to Rockland, when you go to Lincoln and everything too, you're swinging into PG&E country. And that's just something for you guys to be aware of, because honestly, there is a huge difference between SMUD and PG&E, 100%. And it's just something to be aware of, especially if you're someone like, let's say like in reverse, right? Not reverse, but let's just say you're coming in from like 1,800 square foot condo in the Bay Area, and you know, you're on PG&E and you get a 3,000 square foot house here. That electricity bill is going to be really, really big, especially if you don't have solar. So it's just kind of something just to keep in mind in the back of your heads that, like, you know, Sacramento is so spread out. We actually have 3 areas where you can have different electricity, like Roseville Electric, SMUD, and if you go into Placer and areas like Rockland and Lincoln and El Dorado Hills, you know, like you got like PG&E, and it's just something just to keep in mind, because those are things that are really going to impact kind of like your bills, right? I mean, everyone will look at a house and go like, oh, you know what? It's fantastic. I got this house. The payment's a little bit more. Property taxes are more. But the additional stuff that you have to just factor in are like maintenance, HOAs, Mello-Roos, and also the big one is utilities. When you get a bigger house, you have to do additional, like you're going to be paying a lot more when it comes to utilities. Because like I mentioned, for like Aaron and I talked about, as far as the weather goes, you will see the seasons change in Sacramento, but you will get like some, like this year for us right now, we had like 44 days, I think over 100 degrees. And so just understand that that will equal you running your AC, because it will be one of those things where you're feeling like you're living in a hot box if you don't. So I would just say, just factor that in a little bit about where you're living, because electricity is something that, like I said, if you don't have solar or whatnot, it's just something that is going to be an added expense. And if you're really stretching your budget on where you're living, that could be big. Right, Aaron?
Oh, dude, that's great advice, man. I mean, between that, I feel like the utilities and the homeowners insurance are like 2 of this, like the sneaky expenses that catch people off guard. You know, they look at the house price, they look at the mortgage rates, you know, property taxes, whatever. And, you know, they're like, oh, I think I could make this work. But they're not, you know, factoring in that, you know, maybe they're in a high fire zone or a flood zone or something like that. And then, of course, that's going to make it more expensive. And then, you know, PG&E is just, there's nothing good to say about that company. I mean, they're just expensive, man. So if you're going to be in PG&E country and not have solar, you got to factor that into your budget.
No, 100%. I mean, solar for me would have been, if I would have gone into PG&E country, or I would have just, I mean, solar would have been the first thing I would have done for my house. And I always encourage people, like, just solar is so big, PG&E. And the other thing too to consider as well too, when you have those brownouts, you know, like, you know, it's usually when the weather is like 115 degrees and it's hot and your AC is out, you know, so it's not just like your TV or like, you know, we can deal with it. You know, it's usually at the worst times of the year. So just be aware. You know, they're like,
they don't do those on like the cool, breezy 70 degree afternoons. It's when it's $110 and, you know, like you need your air conditioning.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's brutal. And all of a sudden the restaurants all fill up in Sacramento. Speaking of that, like as far as lifestyle goes, I just want to hit on this just a little bit. I would say for lifestyle wise, I grew up in the Bay Area. And when I grew up in the Bay Area, it was nice. Community vibes, a lot of like everyone kind of knew each other and everything like that. But a lot of the areas in the Bay Area and a lot of areas have kind of changed. COVID, all that stuff too. I think in Sacramento, like there's so many cool communities that like close down the streets, 4th of July. Sure. The community vibe here in Sacramento is really, really, they do movie nights in the park. The people are gathering on their lawns on Friday nights, sometimes hanging out. The community vibe here in Sacramento. And I think that like Aaron, for example, he's like an OG Sacramentoan. But like for me, like growing up in the Bay Area and like moving out of the Bay Area, one of the reasons why I moved out was because I just felt like I didn't know my neighbors, didn't know my area. You know, the house is fine, but it just didn't become like an environment where I felt like very like it was friendly. It wasn't as friendly as it was before, and the community vibe basically all but disappeared. And for me, the thing is, a lot of people we bring in from other areas that come into Sacramento, they're very kind of apprehensive at first, but then all of a sudden everyone's waving, hey, how's it going? Where are you from? Oh my God, I moved in like 2 years ago from this spot. So I think if you're looking for something that's very kind of community friendly, something where like if your kids are going to go to school, are they going to make friends? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're going to make friends. You know what I mean? Like there's that, right? The other inner thing that always ties in everyone here in community is the fact that like we have so many sports programs. For me, we made a lot of friends because we were part of the swimming team. And all of a sudden it was like people were setting up our tents for us, hanging out. We were all getting to know each other. Soccer was the same thing. Basketball was the same thing. Yep. So if you're looking for something, not only for like the schools or the area or the affordability, which Sacramento definitely has that in California. If you're looking for something that's also like you're thinking, I wonder how my kids are going to acclimate to the area. I wonder how are they going to make friends and everything too. My daughter is super, super shy, and she is like the queen of her friend group. She just loves it. They all get along. You know, so for me, that was one of the things that worried me, that and sports and that stuff for your kids. We have a lot of it. A lot of the parents jump in there and start different like sports programs as well too. Activities at night, people getting together. I mean, for Halloween that's coming up sooner than later, we got a point where we're going to be meeting with about like 30 families and all the kids are going to get together. So if that's kind of one of the things that worries you about making the move over here, understand that like I haven't had a problem. Aaron, how about you? Have you had a problem with that?
No, I you know, that's why I haven't left yet. I mean, it definitely is a good area to be in.
Okay. And also another thing too I want to hit as well too, and this is a big one for jobs, right? Now, we mentioned it earlier, but one of the things that a lot of people are kind of sick of is working in an area like the Bay Area where tech is so heavy, where you're freaking out about your job and you're going paycheck to paycheck. Maybe at times you're renting. The nice thing about the Sacramento area is that state jobs are abundant here, right? A lot of people, I'd say at least 50% of the people I know have state jobs, easy. And we have also people coming in working at like Intel, working at like Micron, working at Amazon, working at like Apple. So we do have tech as well too. And then because we're building all these new schools and all this new infrastructure and all these companies are coming into Sacramento, there is a little bit more, like the job market here is, I've never heard anyone really complain about it, right? So like the job wise goes, and everyone's always kind of looking for areas and going, I wonder what I'm going to do for a living here. The thing is here is there's like diversity of jobs that you can also have that security with the state jobs. So I like it as far as it goes. I mean, I think entrepreneurship is another thing that's huge here, but I do like going into a market where I'm thinking to myself, you know, if my industry tanks for some reason or the stocks, whatever, like I'm going to be hit pretty bad and I have a mortgage payment to pay. Here, I've seen a lot of people that maybe started their careers over at Oracle, then they pivot over to like maybe the DMV or the DRE or even IRS over here too. So I have seen that happen. And a lot of people are like drinking their coffees, going home and working at home because they have a nice state job. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind as well too. If with the election, with the recession, with all that kind of consumer debt, the idea is you kind of want to be in an area where you're going to be able, if you somehow something happens to your job, you can pivot to something else. And I love the Sacramento area for that specifically. What do you think as far as our top employers in the area, Aaron?
Well, we definitely have a lot of diversity in our our job market in Sacramento. I think that's part of what's kept our real estate values up throughout the various market cycles over the years compared to other markets. 1 out of 5 people are employed by the state of California. Another 2 out of 5 work for a company that is basically like a contractor of the state of California. And then you've got, you go to some towns and there's like 1 hospital or 2 hospitals. There's like 30 hospitals out here. I don't know if we just like get more broken arms than other area, people or whatever, but there are a ton of hospitals out here, which means there's a lot of really, good high paying jobs. You've got Intel, you've got a lot of like, a lot of tech companies moved out here. You got a lot of legal firms. I mean, there's you just go down the list. There's a whole lot of economic diversity. And because of all the growth, whether it's schools or houses or whatever, there's a lot of blue collar growth and opportunity out here too. You don't need to be behind a computer, to make a good living out here. There's a lot of, demand for all sorts of different blue collar industries as well, because everything's growing. Somebody's going to need a plumber, an electrician, or whatever the case is. So there's a lot of demand for that as well. Which is nice because like you mentioned, if you live in the Bay Area, if you're in Cupertino or whatever, and, there's a tech crunch and, all the tech companies, their stock is getting hammered and, the NASDAQ's down and all that stuff. It's, it's not feeling very comfortable over there when, Facebook and Google and everybody starts doing mass layoffs. Whereas when you're in a town where, because let's face it, the government never really lays anybody off. Yeah, they do some furloughs and, some stuff like that. But I mean, it's totally not the same as the private sector. And so you do have a lot of strength in the foundation of our economy out here, just because, you got the state, all the state government and a lot of federal government based out of here as well. So it's a good place for jobs.
Well, not only that, here's the thing. You hit the nail on the head as well, too, because we have all this new home being built and all these new homes. Like, we have a lot of people who are doing like blue collar stuff, like building houses, like putting in flooring. Contractors, you can't even find, it's hard to find contractors. Landscapers the same way. So if you're someone who's like saying to yourself, man, I kind of want to start my own business. I mean, there's so many business based in the new homes. And you have also people who are thinking, like, I've talked to a few doctors who are like, I want to do private practice. I'm going to rent an office space right in Folsom Ranch because there's like 30,000 new homes, 30,000 new patients, and I'm doing it. So the opportunities here in the Sacramento area are really, really abundant. Where in other areas, you could see those McMansions in Texas, but you're thinking to yourself, where can I go to get like a good paying job? And it just doesn't work out. So here, I love the idea also that it's not really a pipe dream here, right? It's like, okay, you know what? I want to move to Sacramento. This is what I do for a living. Let me look out there. Let me look at the state job website and see what I can do. Oh my God, I love that. I'm going to do it. Or you know what? I've been doing landscaping. I want to start my own business. Let's go to some of the new homes because they don't put backyards in, and let's see if we can start some landscaping and put up some flyers and call it a day. So I do love that about Sacramento as far as job opportunities, entrepreneurship, job industries here. We just have a lot. And like Aaron said, nurses and doctors, what I've heard from every nurse and every doctor that I've moved in is the fact that they pay great here and they treat the doctors and nurses well. So I love it. Like I said, that's one of the things that I tell people more than anything. Job diversity. We love it. Okay, let's hit another area. Granite Bay. Probably the most price per square foot probably the most expensive spot in the Sacramento area. We're gonna go high and then we're gonna go low and medium as far as price points as well too. So just so you guys know, we're not just going. We're gonna start at the tippy top. So Grant Bay, I mean, this is where you're gonna find those, like, you know, those houses that have like the U-shaped driveway, the gates, the views, the, like, you know, oh, I have a 7,000 square foot house and I have a guest, you know, though that's where Granite Bay is. Areas like, you know, communities like Shelbourne, areas like Wexford, areas like Los Lagos, areas like Eden Rock. These are big communities there. So if you're someone who says, I want a big house, I got like 30 people in my family, I'm moving them all in. Like, Granite Bay has always kind of been that area that, like, that had those type of houses. I would say if someone asked me, hey, Mark, I'm looking for an estate style home, Granite Bay is probably where I'd go. And the price per square footage is just through the roof because look how close it is to like Folsom Lake. And if you look on the map right here, it's between the 50 and the 80, so you have access to both freeways. You're about 5 minutes from like shopping in Roseville. The location's fantastic. So that's kind of what I would say about Granite Bay. There's some new home builders out there like Tim Lewis that are building, and like Anthem United building White Hawk. And back in the day, there was like, I think Blue Mountain was out there too. But for the most part, there's not a whole lot of land out there. There's just a lot of big houses. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think you explained it well with, you know, there's really no land out there for the most part. You're definitely not having like big, you know, new home communities coming through there. It's mainly custom home or like spec home, you know, opportunities where they're building a few really nice, you know, $2-3 million homes or whatever. Granite Bay is a really nice community. It's a, you know, a higher end community right next to the lake. Like you said, conveniently located. You're going to find fire insurance in a lot of those houses, especially if you're outside of the communities that you mentioned, like the Wexford or things like that, where it's more of a suburb. If you're on property, or like in Los Lagos or some of those custom neighborhoods that are further up Folsom Auburn Boulevard, you're going to have that really expensive fire insurance. There's a lot of equestrian properties out there. A lot of people that live in that area in those higher end homes, they're into the, you know, the horse game. So if you've got horses or want horses, that's a really popular area. In addition to you know, areas kind of further up that, like Newcastle or Lincoln.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there's other areas, and we'll probably do a part 2 of this as well, too, because Sacramento is so big. We'll probably be talking about like areas like Auburn in the next one, Loomis in the area, and next one, yeah, Pilot Hill and Newcastle and everything, too, because there's a lot to cover, like Shingle Springs, Cameron Park, and everything, too. But we wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of idea of like what to expect if you move into the Sacramento area. If you're looking for those estate-style homes, Grant Bay is definitely one of those spots to be looking at. I would say price per square foot in the Sacramento area, you'd probably be looking at maybe like the Fab 40s, areas like Los Lagos, maybe like Shelbourne, Wexford. I'd say there's some parts of Loomis, probably Serrano North as well too. Those are going to be the most, like, probably the pricier homes in the Sacramento area. Now, if you're someone coming in here and going, man, I ain't spending $2 million in Sacramento, I want something that's a little bit more affordable, or else I would have stayed in Danville, then I would say, what would be the areas you'd look at if you're thinking yourself, I want to keep it underneath like $500,000. Can I still do that in Sacramento, or is Sacramento one of those spots that's unaffordable? What would you say?
Well, I think what you got to do at that point is, first off, you got to decide, are you going to be a new build or a resale? If you're going new build, there are a handful of communities, but they're, you know, kind of more on the outskirts, or, you know, maybe in some of the, you know, less desirable areas. But if you go into the resale market, especially if you're near the college or near the hospitals along the 50 corridor, there's several neighborhoods along the 80 corridor as well, where you can definitely get in for, you know, around 500,000 or less. But I would say that, you know, probably for most people, like a good starting point for a starter house is going to be around that like $500,000 marker. And then if you're, you know, really aspiring to be in one of the, you know, more popular, you know, parts of town that you and I have been, you know, discussing on this pod, you know, of like Folsom or Elk Grove or things like that. Although probably not in Folsom. In Elk Grove, I know you can find some houses still in that 500 range. They're going to be resales and maybe a little smaller or whatever. But I would, encourage anybody that, like you're looking at the price points and stuff and you're like, well, shoot, I would really like the $1 million house, but all I can afford right now is the $500,000 house or whatever. Keep in mind that the majority of the people that can afford the $1 million house, the reason that they can afford it is that they owned the $500,000 house and they own that thing for 10 years or whatever. And now it's worth $1 million or whatever. And they're selling it and they're taking this giant war chest and making a huge fat down payment. Most of the people that we do business for, that I do loans for, they're not borrowing $2 million and having like a $20,000 a month payment. They're having a reasonable monthly payment, but they're making really large down payments when they're buying these, $1 or $2 million homes. So some food for thought.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, like I said, a lot of people are making the move from the Bay Area, selling out their house. And like Aaron said, like coming in with a big wad of cash that they want to use. But I would say for a lot of people, like maybe if you're renting in the Bay or renting some other area and you're coming out here for your first home, maybe you're getting transferred and you're like, look, I'm just kind of new to Sacramento and I'm not really sure exactly what I'm doing. We want to keep it under a budget. I would say the areas that I would look at, Elk Grove, I think in the 624 is probably still doable, but you're going to have a small house, like maybe 1,350 square feet, maybe a 3 and 2. I would say West Sacramento is another spot that we'll cover in another video. I'd say West Sacramento, close to downtown. If you're someone that's kind of moving and you're saying, oh my God, I work at Merrill Lynch downtown and I just need to be close by there, I would say like West Sacramento could be that spot for you. It's like super close to Sacramento. It's sometimes overlooked because it's in Yuba County, Yolo County, sorry. And it's a nice spot. I would say also the areas that I would probably look at too. I mean, like Aaron said, like the Vineyards, which is kind of in between Sacramento and Elk Grove. It's nice. Like Rancho. A lot of people love the Rancho area because certain parts are still in the Elk Grove Unified School District, and it's kind of like an up and coming area, very master plan-ish. I would say other areas that I'd probably look at, and I always call them the forgotten children of Sacramento. I would also look, if you like ranch style homes and everything too, like the Rosemont, La Riviera area near Sacramento State, that's one. But then the other ones, like the forgotten ones, and I think they're really good buys, honestly, are the Citrus Heights, the Fair Oaks, the Orangevale, and certain parts are like Rancho. I think those areas also, like you can find pockets of $1 million houses in every single one of those areas. But the thing that I really like about those areas is you get the houses that have nice kind of spacing. You got nice yards. They're a little bit older, but I love the bones in a lot of them too. So I think that there are pockets in almost every of those areas too that you can probably get for under $500,000, and you'll have that land, you'll have that kind of community vibe and everything. Antelope's another one of those, but at the same time, the ones I'd be looking at, honestly, would be like the Fair Oaks, Orangevale, Citrus, and Carmichael, because I do think because they're not as popular or known as your Folsoms, your Rosevilles, your Grant Bays, I think sometimes those could be the spots that you're going to get a great house, great community, great area. There's even some mid-century modern in those areas as well, too. Now, Aaron, if you're looking between maybe let's say 600 and 850, what would be the areas that you would look at?
Oh man, well, Elk Grove for sure. I mean, you're going to be able to get most of what's available in Elk Grove. Besides doing like what our boy Sabo did and getting a ranch style house out on some property, or some of the really high end new homes, or the 4,000 square foot or whatever. But if you're able to go up to 850, you're going to have access to probably like a good 75–80% of the market out there, with a lot of options. You'll be able to get into all 3 zip codes. With that price point, you'd also be able to get into a lot of the areas in Folsom. Definitely beyond just the entry level houses in Folsom. On the new build side, if you're on the resale side, that'll definitely get you into some of the smaller ones, at least like through Lexington Hills and Broadstone Community and those. And then that also, that would open up a lot of doors in Roseville. You'll find a little bit of inventory in Rockland, probably not much. It'll be on the smaller end. And then, really, if you're really looking for, like you mentioned a bunch of different neighborhoods, And really, like the ones that I mentioned, that you mentioned, they're kind of all like the Folsoms or the Rosevilles of the past, like Citrus Heights or Orangeville. You go way back in the day, and those were the newer neighborhoods as Sacramento grew out. And depending on, you know, where you want to live at, for 800 and up to 850 grand, I mean, there are a lot of options for some really nice resale houses that have like a good sized yard and trees and a pool. And, you know, you could even find some where, you know, the previous owner's already done a lot of the hard work of like remodeling, you know, maybe removing some walls. So now it's open concept or whatever the case is. So I'd really encourage you to spread your wings a bit and open your search up if you've got that price point to work with, for sure.
Oh, no, 100%. One more honorable mention for the 550s. I would say North Natomas. I love the area.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, the 550, they tend to like want to feel out the area a little bit. They want to kind of say, you know, maybe I'll sell this and move on, or maybe I'll use it as my first rental property, which we think is a great idea. I would also say North Natomas is fantastic because it's located between the airport and downtown. So you're kind of in the thick of things, but if you decide to like, you know, keep it and have it as your first rental, it's a really hot area for rentals as well too. Airbnb, short-term, long-term, and appreciation. I like the North Natomas area. So for me, those are kind of the spots I would kind of be looking at. Now for 850, I'd say between 650 and 850, Aaron's right. I mean, if you're looking for something for a 3 and 2 under 2,000 square feet, I would say the only areas that you might not be able to find something would be like in East Sacramento, North Serrano, or maybe like what's called Grant Bay as well too. It might be tough in Loomis because they build a lot of houses with big land out there too. But for the most part, I think 3 and 2, like the 600 and 850, that's when you're going to see the houses with like, you know, just like 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bath in some of the areas, or 3 and 2 in other areas. You're going to see maybe pool houses and everything, houses with pools. You know, you're going to find that. I think that's kind of like right now the sweet spot in our Sacramento area. That's a spot where you're like, let's go for a ride, but we got to break down the area. Let's go to the 50 an area one day. Let's go to the 80 the other area, and then we'll break down the best of the other areas the next day. So that's definitely something that you have free range. And then I would say as far as 850 to maybe 1.1, I mean, I necessarily don't think you need to even go that high unless you really, really want to. But I think at that point in time, other than areas like maybe like the Fab 40s, other than like maybe like the Wexfords and Los Lagos and stuff like that, or Serrano North or certain parts, I think like that's when you can kind of have your pick of the litter around here, don't you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, from 850 to 1.1, I mean that kind of takes you right to like the limit of just being a straight up full blown custom, you know, luxury house essentially. So you'd have access to all the different markets for the most part, leading up to, you know, your just complete crazy custom house on the hills or on the lake or whatever the case is. But you'd have a lot of options. You know, I always, my wife and I, when we look at houses and stuff, it's like, does that check off the box for you or check off enough boxes or whatever the case? And it's like, it's all price related, right? You look at a you know, $500,000 house and you're like, well, I don't really like this. I don't like that. You look at the 800 and you're like, wow, I do like this, but you know, now I'm being picky and I don't like the shape of the yard or whatever the case is. You get up into the, you know, the 1.1 range. And I mean, anything beyond that, and you have to be picky because you're paying to just have like a fully custom, you know, place essentially. So that's, you know, one of the things that I think that Sacramento has to offer for most people that are considering relocating here is that most people, when they're relocating, in my opinion at least, they're leaving higher priced areas for more economically, you know, viable places that have more resources to offer, things like that. A lot of times it's job related or whatever the case is. But if you're coming from the Bay Area, which is, you know, probably the majority of the people that do the reloads, but even we work with a lot of people that have like come from LA, Seattle, Chicago, you know, other high priced areas on the East Coast and stuff. And, you know, if you're comparing like what you pay to be like in a condo in those markets, or like renting a house that, in those markets, or owning a little tiny like postage stamp bungalow, 1,100 square foot house in those areas, you can afford pretty much whatever you want out in this region, within reason. You can really tap into whatever lifestyle you want, and whatever style of home or community. And then the cool thing is, in my opinion, is that not only are the homes more affordable, but like when I go to the Bay Area, everything's a little bit more expensive. Gas is more expensive. The food's more expensive. Everything costs a little bit more. And so, it's a little bit cheaper out here. So your money goes further. And if you're one of those lucky people that's able to take your Bay Area or LA or wherever you come from, your higher, cost area income, and bring it into Sacramento, oh my Lord, you're living like a king out here. So we've had a ton of people that have taken advantage of that. And everybody that I've talked to, and I check in with people from time to time after we close, and they're all just happy as can be. And, they're just loving their decisions.
Let me ask you, okay, so let's end it with this.
Yeah.
What would be your top 3 hurdles for someone relocating to the Sacramento area, like Sacramento, California? What would be those 3 things that you'd say, like, these are the top 3 things that you really need to get on your radar before making the relocation move to the Sacramento area?
Well, the very first thing, and I mentioned this in the beginning, but it's super important, is like, where do you plan on spending most of your time? Because if you plan on, like for me, for instance, the reason that I own a house next to Sac State is that when I bought that house, I was a regional manager for a mortgage company, and I had offices all over the state. And that was like a center point for me, where every day I'd have to drive, I was doing hundreds and hundreds of miles a week. And so for me, it was a convenience thing, because if I lived in Elk Grove, like where I'm originally from, Elk Grove, and if I had to drive to Reno or Roseville or whatever, I mean, it takes an hour to get from Elk Grove to Roseville, especially in traffic. So figure out where you want to be so that you can have a commute that doesn't make you hate yourself every time you hop into your car. Another thing that I think that you really got to figure out is the weather going to be, are you going to be able to deal with the weather, basically? And we don't live in like Phoenix, Arizona by any means, but it does get hot out here. And it also, in the winter, it'll rain a bunch. So depending on the climate that you're, looking for, I know a lot of the people in the Bay Area, they really enjoy the cooler climate, all that stuff. And, you're not going to find as much of that out here. So if that's somebody that, like my dad, for instance, like the heat just takes the life out of him. So like if he was relocating out here, I'd be like, hey, make sure, you're in SMUD country. So when you're running your air conditioner 24/7, your bill's low, look into, a place with a pool, things like that. So, and then, as far as, other things as well, there are, depending on like what lifestyle you're looking for, like I have a lot of friends and family that like they eat, breathe, and sleep being out on Folsom Lake. Like they like skiing, wakeboarding, all surfing, all that stuff. If that's what you like doing with all your time, you don't want to live in Elk Grove. So, our region has a lot of extracurricular activities and hobbies and stuff like that to offer, sports, all those kinds of things. But it's depending on where you live on the map, it can really, I guess that's kind of the same thing as I said on my number 1, actually, but it can really impact your life in a good or bad way, depending on how much commuting you got to do. What are your 3?
Kind of the same thing that you said. I mean, for the most part, number 1 is the weather. Check it out during the summertime. That's going to be the biggest thing. We have our rains, we have our cold seasons, but I think that that's kind of traditionally what everyone else has for the most part. But I would say the heat, come around maybe like July 4th and just kind of see that, right? Just be aware of like also like the weather, just the weather patterns. I mean, that's one of the things a lot of people sometimes do get shocked when they come out here and they're like coming in from like a Portland or Seattle. They're like, yeah, it is really, really hot lot. I'd say the next thing too is, like Aaron mentioned, lifestyles. Figure out what you like. Be picky, guys. This isn't just like, oh my God, there's a house that's a 3 and 2 somewhere. We can get it. Oh, this is the dream come true. There's probably gonna be a lot of them. So like, understand, be picky, figure out what lifestyle you want. And like I said, number 3, this is the hugest one. Do your research on the area. Don't just say, Folsom's what we want. Bob, my friend, told me about Folsom. That's where I want to go. You got to break down the areas and figure out exactly what you're playing with, like what the map looks like around here too. For me, I think it's kind of like maybe a 3-day process to kind of get yourself a real good grasp of the Sacramento area. I would say do it freeway-wise. I'd say go 50, go 80. Yeah. Then I would probably go like Elk Grove to like the 65, or not the 65, the 60, what is it? The 5 freeway over there, 99 and 5. Over there. And that's how I would break it down, right? Now, I would say do maybe each one, maybe do about 3 hours on each one. Boom, boom, boom. Now, the rest of your time, what I would also say is check out the areas at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, at nighttime, in the morning. Also go to areas like Target, like Costco's and everything too. Figure out what the people are like there. It's very diverse, different areas, different people and everything too. So figure out what the energy is like, because these people shopping are going to be your neighbors, and it's going to give you a good sense of who your family is going to be around. And I always advise that to every single client. Every single client I have, just like I'm like, look, we're going to do about 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours until you guys start seeing like every bathroom looks the same. And then after that, I want you guys to go have lunch or dinner at the locations that you liked, and then do a little shopping. Maybe even just walk around the stores and see what the people are like. And I'll give you a little bit of an insight to it. And I think people sometimes rush. They see a house because Bob bought in Folsom, I'm going to buy in Folsom. And then a year later, all of a sudden, they're like, I did not even know Roseville was so awesome. I want to be close there. I mean, we had a couple right now that was so dead set on Rancho, and they were like, we love Rancho. Rancho's where we want to go. And then we were like, you know what? I'm showing you West Roseville. Just please humor me. They went to West Roseville, realized it was a lot closer to the stores they liked in Roseville, and all of a sudden now they're like, yeah, we actually like West Roseville because it was an area that we would probably have never looked at, but you kind of pushed us to look there. And now, comparison, West Roseville is a spot for us. So just take the time. This is a very important process. Okay, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, and comment. If we can make this show better for you, let us know in the comments below. Also, we do a live show every single Wednesday at 7 p.m. It's right over here. Take a look at it. And if you're interested, tune in live on Wednesday 7, where we answer all your questions about the Sacramento real estate market just for you.